The Physician's Road. Create your life in medicine. On your own terms. Today, we are on the path to wealth.
The Physician's Road is brought to you by Vernonville Asset Management. Vernonville Asset Management was created to help physicians build wealth and create income beyond Wall Street. Through our exclusive private investments, doctors can begin to free themselves from the burdensome regulations in healthcare by creating income streams independent of medicine. Go to incomebeyondwallstreet.com to get your free report, Wall Street's Biggest Lie. Again, go to incomebeyondwallstreet.com to get Wall Street's Biggest Lie and free yourself today.
Hello. Welcome to the Physician's Road podcast. I am Dr. Eric Tate. Today, we are on the path to wealth again, and I am kind of over the moon ecstatic with who we have brought in today. Just to give you a little bit of background, I have been searching for almost 5 years now to find a partner to work with what is basically the ability for you to create your own insurance company. This is not something that is very well known to people. It is a planning structure and strategy that many wealthy families have used for generations. And as you know, I always try to bring those things that the wealthy use down to those of us kind of working stiffs who are trying to scratch out a living still. And literally, I would say 2012, I was in Mexico at an international investors conference. It was through Sovereign Man Society. Simon Black and I are actually friendly. And so we went to his conference, and he had someone who introduced this concept to me for the first time from the stage. And it immediately struck me because I realized that many of our investors could take advantage of it. And I realized that because we had our investment firm, that the ability to use those funds through the insurance company for our investors was also a very big deal potentially. And so we had a lot of fits and starts. We looked at some things that were offshore. We looked at some things that were onshore. But we think that we've hit on an ideal partnership with someone who has a kinship with us in terms of us having control over our own dollars and us having control over our own financial life. And so I really want to introduce you today to Van Carlson. Van is from SRA, and he is a longtime insurance professional that struck out on his own to help his clients become more financially stable and more financially aware. And so for me, this is a long time in coming. Van doesn't really understand how long I've been searching for someone like him. And so I hope he feels kind of the love from the Physician's Road podcast audience and from us, because we think we've hit on a great partnership to go into the future. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce you all to Van Carlson. And Van's going to tell you a little bit about himself and how he came to kind of the captive insurance market and from his previous iterations in the insurance industry. So Van, how are you doing today?
Very well. Thanks for inviting me to your podcast. I'm always excited to get the information out and education stuff out. So a little bit about myself real quick. I've been in risk management for going on close to 25 years. First and foremost, that's what there's the value I bring to my clients. Unfortunately, risk is discounted a lot of times, especially when everybody wants to think about the upsides. I'm the Debbie Downer in the party a lot of times because I can always identify risk fairly quickly. And so the products and the ideas that was kind of introduced to me in 2008 actually is when I first started looking at this concept myself. I saw this as a great way to recognize risk business owners take on to run their businesses, and furthermore to help with their financial risk management overall. And that's where I really became a believer in our program, was in the 2008 Great Recession. And that's really where we're trying to bring together a bigger, broader take on risk management, no different than Fortune 500 companies. To your monologue intro was, families, very successful enterprises, big name brand companies been utilizing these tools very effectively over the years. And we wanted to bring this concept down to the small to middle market business owners, no different than what you're trying to do for your clients.
Absolutely. And so most of our listeners are going to be in the health profession. So they're going to be physicians, dentists, chiropractors, people who are small business owners. They may be in a group practice. They may be in solo practice. And so that market, I know, is kind of where you talk about the middle market, but a lot of it is service business. So it's not heavy machinery and those kinds of things. And so before we get into the weeds, and as people know, I like to keep things super simple, especially when we're introducing new concepts. Captive insurance. People have heard of it. There are things out there about it. What I want to do is just at a literally second grade level, explain to someone who has no idea what this concept is, what it is exactly.
Okay. So self-insuring risk. Self-insuring risk has never been a deduction under the current tax code. A business owner can't take $1 and set it aside and say, okay, if this happens, this is the dollar I'm going to use. The current tax code says no, self-insuring risk is not a deduction. Therefore, there's a lot of reasons what got developed. Best example I give you is Microsoft. Microsoft is not going to sell somebody product liability insurance, right? So they have to go out and form their own insurance companies. Well, for them to put millions of dollars away into their own insurance companies, they have to do some mechanisms, but it still becomes an expense to the operating company level. But those dollars are actually being put into accounts, and they're designed to pay claims in the future for product liability, for example, or civil lawsuits or whatever. Came along 1986 in the Tax Reform Act. Congress wanted to create a bigger incentive for small to middle market business owners to own their own insurance company. And they actually introduced a tax code called 831B. Going back to that time, farmers were self-insuring crop insurance, for example. Private sectors were getting out. Obviously, when you talk about crop subsidies today, it's really the insurance is being subsidized by the crop insurance programs. But back then, none of that was going on. So Congress basically said, hey, let's introduce a tax incentive to own your own insurance company. No different than the 401k is to create a tax incentive for you to create an employment retirement plan, right? It's all deductions, it's all expense. So 831B was introduced, and that's what really started to drive the bus in a lot of ways for business owners to think about that. Now, back in 1986, you put the first $1.2 million away every year into your insurance company. You can expense it out of your operating company. Your insurance company would not pick it up as taxable income. Why? Because insurance companies are designed to build reserves in order to handle more risk and even to accept more risk, right? I mean, the surpluses, and that's what insurance companies live and breathe to do. So that was a pretty sizable incentive to own your own insurance company. And since then, it's gone from the automotive industries to handling their own extended warranty programs, all the way down to dental practices having their own warranty programs. And then the other thing is a concept known as enterprise risk management. And enterprise risk management is a broad approach to risk that we tell business owners today that due to social medias and due to the age of information that we're in today, risk profiles have gotten much more complicated, and it even gives you more incentive to own your own insurance company because God knows we dump a lot of money into our brand, and we are our brand. And if it gets damaged, we got to be able to go to war with. And what better way to go to war with than pre-tax dollars? And so that's really the basics of why it came about. Obviously, it's worked itself into other things, no different than the 401k did. But we're still thinking that down the road, as time goes on, as education comes out, as we do more programs like this, our hope is to bring the education level out, and it's a tool in the toolbox at the end of the day. It may work for you, may not work for you. But I think the power is understanding and the education of it to where we think with time it will become a normal business practice for successful enterprises to own some kind of form of their own insurance company. And it's not because of the taxes and everything that you're going to probably read about this tax code. It's more of necessity of risk.
Got it. And so just to kind of bring that maybe down just a little. So what you're saying is a captive insurance company is the ability for someone to self-insure a certain amount of risk that they may be taking on in their business. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, that allows them to be able to actually take a deduction out of their company and build tax advantage reserves up. Yes. Okay.
So then the next step is the money that you're going to be putting in that captive insurance is going to come out as a tax deduction from your business. So just like the 401k, it's pre-tax dollars that are being put aside for you to self-insure against some amount of risk that's out there. You talk about intangible risk. We may not go into the weeds so much, but it's not like malpractice risk like people would know. You would still have your own malpractice insurance, but this is risk that may be reputational risk. So let's just say you all had a data breach and you had to pay somebody to fix that. Would that be something that would be allowable?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, we specifically look at the medical community for HIPAA fines, HIPAA violations, and everything out there. We build policies around those risks, for example. So there's political risks pretty high today in the medical community. Licensing, losing your license or temporarily losing your, all of these things that happen that were beyond your control. Again, these are all the incentives to own your own insurance company, because there are so many unknowns. And unfortunately, the world is getting more complicated by the day. And so, absolutely. It is about building up reserves on pre-tax dollars, and you just have more dollars to work with, because truth be told, if one of those things you just mentioned happened, you're just going to use after-tax money to go fight the war with. And you just better hope you got enough after-tax money to go do that with. Our program is always designed, it's a forced savings plan, and it's designed in a way that you hope you never have to use it. I promise you, in any insurance situation, it's never a good day to use an insurance policy. And this way allows you to build up tax advantage reserves that, unfortunately, things happen. And when they do, I'd rather use pre-tax dollars than after-tax dollars.
Absolutely. And so what you're saying is, basically in 1986, Congress enacted the ability, I guess through 831B, the ability for companies to do this. And they created a limit at that point in time of 1.2 million per company that you could set up. Is that correct?
Yes, that was exactly, that's per year. And that's on the insurance company itself would not pick those dollars up as income. The only thing an insurance company does pay is the investment income. So if there's an investment return on those reserves, you pay taxes on those. So, and
we'll get into that a little bit further. But what I want to do is just set the context of what it is, right? So okay, all right, I can basically insure some of my own risk within my practice, and I can get a tax deduction for doing that. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear on what that is, that you can own your own insurance company in certain circumstances with pre-tax dollars to be used to pay out certain risks. And again, we're not going to go into the weeds on the podcast, but if people, they will work that out through the process based upon what their risk exposures are. So right now we're really just going high level overview. Okay. And so, if I remember correctly, I think Congress has recently increased that limit that an individual insurance company can own. The amount it can have inside of it. Yes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And what is it?
Yeah. When the PATH Act became permanent law back in, it was signed by President Obama in 2015, December 2015, they also included the 831B in there, and they made two significant changes, actually. One is they increased it by another $1 million with an inflation rider. So, for example, in 2018 is 2.3. We can anticipate in 2019 that dollar not going up. And then they also got rid of the lineal descendants, meaning that some of the pressure, if you were to Google this code, some of the pressure this code got in trouble because state tax attorneys were out promoting the state tax play, and it became a problem. Congress got rid of that, so meaning that if your practice isn't owned by your kids anymore, they can't own the insurance company either. So that was a good compromise, I think, in a lot of reasons. Unfortunately, this thing goes into the wrong hands, and it's not being sold. It's not being taught as a risk mitigation tool, which is absolutely what it is, but it's more taught as a state tax play. And so some of the cases that have been coming through the court recently, that was the motivation behind them, was to avoid the state taxes. And unfortunately, it's caused a black eye for the industry. However, it's been cleaned up, and going forward, I think we've actually got a clear road path as the do's and the don'ts. So anyway,
okay. Perfect. Well, actually, so let's go into the weeds for a quick second on that. So, okay, let's say you're no longer practicing, you retire, you die. What happens to your insurance company?
Yeah, so at that point, it could become a holding company, right? So it's no longer an active insurance company. It can absolutely go into a holding company situation. and become stagnant. You can shut it down. It is a C Corp, so you pay long-term capital gains. But yeah, there's a variety of things that go on. It does you're just not seeding risk into the insurance company every year after that.
Mm-hmm.
However, we designed our programs to recognize those types of things to where it's affordable still to maintain. Whether you continue on with your practice or one year you just say, hey, I can't fund this year. I don't, whatever, economy, whatever things, world things happen. Right?
Yeah,
so
things happen.
We want to make our program affordable, effective enough, and a long-term planning strategy that most business owners can take advantage of.
Got it. So essentially it becomes part of your estate if something were to happen to you.
Yes.
It's just that if someone does not have risk, meaning a descendant have a piece of your business, no more premium dollars can be put into the insurance company at that point. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Perfect. And so let's hit the nail on the head. Let's go straight for the heart. You alluded to it. So lots of people are saying that captive insurances are tax scams and are tax dodges, and the IRS hates them. And so what is the current state of the industry as it stands right now?
I would tell you that it's growing rapidly still. I mean, one of the things is would we love more guidance from the IRS? Absolutely. I think through court cases we'll get that. But this is going to become a normal business practice. Costs have come way down. When I looked at this thing back in 2008, there was only 8 states promoting you to own their insurance company in their states. There's now 34. Offshore has always been a big option. I would tell you Fortune 500 companies have all their insurance companies offshore. UPS is one of the big ones. Every time you sign up for that damage waiver on that package, all those premiums they're scooping it right out of their company and dumping it into offshore accounts or offshore insurance companies, I should say. We do everything domestically. We don't try to go offshore. We have the most affordable way of doing it. We have all the advantages of going offshore, but we're able to keep them onshore. Does the IRS like them? No. I mean, obviously there's big benefits to the taxpayer. Here's what I will tell you. In my opinion, even the IRS has come out and said these are legitimate tools for business owners. Everybody wants to always, that's just not good enough, right? Everybody's got to stretch them and bend the box. So have they gotten into situations where they try to sell life insurance with them? They've gotten into situations where, they put their reserves in illiquid assets. There's basically a 4-part test owning your own insurance company. And we make sure our clients adhere to the 4-part test. And we do a good job with that. We will probably grow by 100 more clients this year that will form their own insurance companies with us for us to manage. And we just see that number growing every year. And again, successful enterprises will need this more of a risk mitigation than anything. The more clients we talk to, the more people we see, they've all experienced something that along the lines meant, man, this would have made all the difference in the world had we just had this program in place. And so, I think it's one of those things where the IRS says, hey, get me once, but don't get me twice. It's that twice when the IRS, they look at things and people, I've literally sat in those meetings that you probably back in 2013 when it was first introduced to you, talking about tax-free income and how you can take money out and borrow and all. It's like, guys, if it starts to sound too good to be true, there's a good chance it is. One of the things that's been a hang-up is distribution of risk. We don't get cute with that. We make it very up front. Hey, you can't own 100% of your own risk and call yourself an insurance company. One of the basic principles of insurance is the law of large numbers and how are you utilizing that. We have a great training videos. We have great educational videos to show clients to say, hey, there's an element of risk to owning your own insurance company, and that's that distribution of risk. However, we do that in a way that makes sense to you and it makes sense to the IRS. And it kind of goes back to the co-op days when a lot of these insurance companies we've come to know today that's 100 years old on the books, they were originally formed as co-ops, meaning a great example is Farmers Insurance. 2 farmers in Southern California got together because they couldn't get farm liability on their cars. They formed a co-op. And out of that, they grew an insurance company. I would tell you when we talk with business, we're forming co-ops. We're forming co-ops with like-minded individuals, successful enterprises that say, okay, I can afford to do this program first and foremost. It makes sense for me. I have these risks. Would I rather go to war with pre-tax versus after-tax? All these things. But again, it's going to become a normal business practice. Costs keep coming down. If you looked at these programs prior to '08, just to form an insurance company law firms were charging $250,000. And the reason why they were charging that much is because they could. But like everything else happens, I mentioned the domicile increase. Was that more and more domiciles, more availability to place your insurance companies other places, guess what happens? Costs go down, and so that's just the way the markets work, right? Well, it's working in this market too. So by costs coming down, fees coming down, it's creating the ability for more and more small to middle market successful enterprises to look at owning their insurance companies. And it's just going to continue. I think with the latest court cases that have come out, it's given us, the judges are smart enough to say, hey, here's the wrong way of doing it, here's the right way. As long as you're doing it the right way, we're good with this. Congress passed the tax code. Congress created the tax incentive. It's just how you use those incentives is obviously key. And obviously, I'm sure you got sophisticated listeners. You can see where the abuses would come from, but that doesn't matter. There's abuses in every industry. There's abuses in the medical community, as we know, right? There's good players and bad players, but at the same time.
Well, actually, I think let's make life easy. Let's talk about the 4-part test, because I think that's really the crux of it, right? I mean, that's really where folks get in trouble or don't get in trouble, right? So just very quickly talk about what the 4 parts of the test are and kind of how you as a company make sure that you run those 4 parts.
Yeah, and I would say we definitely provide the conduit for our clients to do that. So the first part of the test is a transfer of risk. You have to have a transfer of risk. No difference when I pay my malpractice insurance premiums, I'm transferring that risk to an insurance company. We have that conduit. And then there has to be a risk distribution. That's the second part of the test. There has to be more risk besides yourself that you're insured inside your insurance company. And we provide those pools. And again, those are deep conversations, but we're happy to have them at a later date. And then you have to have a fortuitous risk, meaning it has to happen by accident. It can't not be business-related type risk. Unfortunately, a lot of our clients always want those business risks handled because, that's what part of the things that keep them up at night. But that being said, that's a business risk versus a fortuitous risk.
Can you give an example of a business risk that people are trying to cover that it is not fortuitous?
In my opinion, would be a key employee that works for your operation, right? That's key to your business, right? And let's say it's a key office manager for you. And man, God, if you were to lose that person, it's going to affect me. It's going to affect my business. But if that person decides to go get a better job paying somewhere, or the spouse got a promotion somewhere, and now they have to move, we don't think those are insurable type risks. Those are everyday business occurrences, right? So that's an example that we would tell you that doesn't seem like that's an insurable risk. That didn't happen by accident necessarily, right? And obviously you can make the argument it did, but in our opinion, that's a straight up business risk. Unlike, that same office manager mistakenly, and this has happened, where it posted, hey, the dental hygienist worked on their first HIV patient this morning. They made a comment like that on Facebook. That's a problem, right? I mean, that's detrimental to your, that's somebody that maybe made an intentional decision to post something like that, but it's fortuitous in nature to the dental practice. It happened by accident. I mean, unfortunately, stupid things get covered all the time. Stupid things get covered all the time in the insurance world. It's improper decision-making sometimes that causes these things, obviously, but it's fortuitous in nature. So I hope that helped a little bit define that, because I think it's important to understand that.
No, that's absolutely, we definitely want to clarify that. And then what's the fourth test?
Fourth one is acting in the principles of insurance. And that's where we get back into risk distribution part of it, but also that you have to have the proper policies. You have to have solvency. Can your insurance company handle the risk it's issuing for? Is your reserves being invested in a way that makes sense? And of course, we get into different definitions of reserves and surpluses and all that stuff. So that's a 4-part test: transfer risk, risk distribution, fortuitous risk, and principles of insurance, all of which are in depth. So the educational level here and the learning curve here is far and wide at times. but we try to help our clients understand that the basics of it. But we're here to manage their insurance company, and we're certainly not here to complicate their lives either. We have a turnkey approach to making sure that our clients adhere to all 4 parts of those tests.
I was going to say, I'll be honest with you, most physicians are so busy. What they want is an expert that they can bring in who's going to make sure that those tests get covered and that they are covered. There are a few out there that want to go super deep in the weeds, but for the most part, they want to understand that you understand what you're doing and that what you're doing is going to keep them in compliance and keep them safe over the long run. From that standpoint, most don't want to get hit over the head. At least most physicians that we work with don't want to get hit over the head with all of the details, but they want to know exactly kind of, all right, you know what you're doing. We're in the code section. These are the major kind of roadmap of the code section. You're showing us why and how we're on that road, and then we're going to move forward from that standpoint. So that's great.
Let me say this too, Eric, and I think this is a very key difference why we're confident where we're at. As long as our clients play by our rules and their insurance company were to ever be challenged, we provide the legal team to defend them in court in the event that happens. So that's how confident, as long as we're confident enough in our program that as long as our clients adhere by our rules, we will provide the legal team in the event they ever challenged at their insurance company level.
Wow.
That's how confident we are.
That's a great guarantee.
Truth be told, our legal team is we consider them the brightest and the best, obviously, but at the same time, they all either work for the IRS under the chief counsel, or they were at one point prosecuting attorneys for the IRS. And our attorneys are legal opinions, any of that kind of stuff. Any of your listeners can request it through your connections. We're happy to provide any legal opinions they may want to, but just know that as long as that's how confident we are about our program. And I think we're probably one of the only insurance managers out there that would say that to you. But that's how confident we are with our program.
Well, that's really impressive. I mean, that's what we call a kind of a outrageous guarantee. And I always like companies that will give an outrageous guarantee to stick behind their services. And so, I mean, let's be realistic about this. From an IRS standpoint, what the IRS wants is taxes. Let's just put it out on the table. And so the way that you all have set this program up and everything that we've talked about, people will be paying taxes as their money goes from being at risk to not being at risk. I mean, so the thing that the IRS cares about, in many ways, the way you set your program up, the IRS is going to get what they want. Am I right?
Yes. In fact, I'd say these are tax-deferred dollars. And obviously, if you do it right, you can declare a dividend or you pay long-term capital gains. And it's still a game winner because of, versus ordinary income and all that stuff. But absolutely. In fact, I tell clients all the time, anybody ever says anything's tax-free, obviously thinks they're going to leave this world alive then, because I always grew up with my dad, death and taxes. That's all I've ever heard, right? So yeah, there is no get out of, obviously there are some strategies, but we're not part of that. The bottom line is absolutely client, you're deferring the taxes. And here, let's be real. I mean, this is about, I jokingly say this, but unfortunately, I wish I was wrong. I mean, go back to 2008. The companies that got bailed out were companies that were so large that the U.S. national security couldn't afford them to go out of business. You either better get that big, right, or you better do something different, meaning you better become more tax efficient. If this is your best year, to put away 5-10% of your gross revenue into an insurance company like this to build for those rainy day funds, to me, that's just good risk mitigation, first and foremost. But the reality is this: if the world turns against you, or the economy takes a hit, or some unforeseen thing happens, what are you going to do? I mean, are you just going to rely on that you can weather the storm again? I say no. I say be smart, be more efficient, do what smart money does. Smart money doesn't run to the market when it's an all-time high. Well, you know what? Get more efficient with your dollars, because making $1 of profit today is tough. And unfortunately, it gets discounted a lot in our country.
Absolutely.
The risk takers are
absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't need you to go any further. from what you just said. I'll take it from there after that standpoint. So suffice it to say that what he talked about from a strategic standpoint of using dollars, that's in many ways what we end up doing for our clients, separate and apart from this. And again, this is about introducing the concept of captive, not kind of what the back end strategy is as of yet. And so let's talk about, because we're going to be wrapping up in terms of, you kind of covered it, but let's talk about who can use these types of insurance companies. I let people who are employed understand that this is not for them, that you have to be a business owner, you have to be a partner in a practice, but give kind of the minimums and things that are needed for this to make sense for someone.
Yeah. So, it's a 162 line item deduction, which means it's a necessary and ordinary business expense. So as long as you've got that in your code, you're eligible to take advantage of one of your insurance company. Beyond that, I always tell clients, we built a program for you to want to, be in a position to fund for risk every year. However, we also know that things happen. So some years you can't fund, but our program is still affordable to maintain it. But we do want to make sure we instill the idea that this is a long-term planning strategy, which, to be in and out every year, you would lose at this program. That's not what you want to get into. You want to get into this becomes part of your strategy in a lot of levels, not just risk mitigation, but other strategies come into play that you can talk to your clients about. But so it's a long-term planning tool. So I think you have to, so your mindset has to be a little different unfortunately, than what we're predisposed to today. There is no incentive to save money, unfortunately, in our current tax code. Zero, right? They want, the way it's really designed is to spend more money, right? And so for me, it's, you got to reset your brain. So, for the type of client that we typically deal with, they're looking at down the road more. They're looking for different strategies. They're tired of putting all their eggs in one basket, maybe in their firm, where they just keep buying more equipment or doing those types of things and are getting bigger for the sake of getting bigger. So that's one thing. So your mindset's got to be sitting in a certain way that you're not trying to keep up with the Joneses necessarily. You've kind of passed that point in your life. You're trying to look at the sunset a little bit more, and you want to be smart with your money, because making money is not easy. And really making the profit is what's got to be addressed, right? Yeah. So that's one thing. And then when it comes to minimums, what you should be able to afford to be able to put every year into your program, in your own insurance company, I mean, it's all over the board today. I got dentists that say, I don't like the 401k so much. I'd rather do your program, and we price it out accordingly and everything else. So, and then we got clients that will do the max, as long as we can provide the actuarials to justify the premiums and so forth. So I would tell you that, I've got guys that are doing $20,000 a year in the program, and then as high as over $1 million a year program. But it's all over the board from that standpoint. It's cross industries. In the medical community, I think we're probably most predominant as far as, if I had to say, a sector that own their own insurance companies. But I think it's really has to do with the risk profiles that they have. I mean, unfortunately, with asset protection and everything else that they're doing today, there's a lot to be worried about. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of tools out there for them to use. And again, when I talk to people, this is just a toolbox at the end of the day. It's worth vetting out. It's worth understanding it. And it may not be the right time today, but eventually, the more successful you'll become, the more of a necessity owning your own insurance company will be part of that.
I think that's a great place to leave our first introductory podcast. So what I always like to do is open the floor. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have? Is there anything that is oftentimes a misconception that people have that you want to clear up that we didn't go through from a question standpoint? Just give you a couple of minutes to kind of open the floor and say, hey, people think this, but it's really this. How whatever your experience has been, please let our listeners know kind of what you'd like to tell them that I didn't cover.
Yeah. So, I think I covered earlier about the IRS doesn't like these things. They put them on the dirty dozen. Your CPA is not going to understand this program. They're going to know about it from a very deep, I would say, from a very surface issue, when really this is a deep educational type product. And go back to the 401k. 1978, the tax code was introduced. It was only introduced for people that made over $250,000 of taxable income. And it's only because back then, 68%, if you made over $250,000, 68% of it was taxed. So they came out with an incentive to do a 401k plan. And then it took a CPA in 1980 to read the code and go, wait a minute, you can do this for all your employees. But in the beginning, it almost guaranteed you an audit. There was discrimination going on with employees. ERISA rules weren't even in place yet. A lot of case laws that have been developed, and costs were pretty high to where the point where if you didn't have several hundred employees, you didn't do a 401k. It just wasn't, it was meant for the big boys. Well, now we got the same thing going on here where 831B, the IRS doesn't like them. It's great taxpayer benefits. To your point earlier, Eric, the IRS their only goal in life is to collect as much tax revenue as possible. That's their job. Of course, they don't like these types of tools. And unfortunately, abuses are going to come along the way. No different than the 401k. But with time, with understanding, with guidance, with case precedents, 401ks have become a normal business practice. So much so, a lot of them even hate them now because there's really no benefit for a doctor to make the kind of revenues that doctors make. 401ks are not, and they're just kicking the can down the road anyway. And if I need access to those funds, I can't get it. So to our program, not only is it, Uncle Sam's not going to come and bail you out if something happened, especially if it's the recession, but more importantly, what happens if somebody did put something out on a medical record of your patients by mistake? Is the government agency going to step in and help you with that? No, they're going to come in and actually fine you now. So who's going to, your insurance company, your traditional insurance company is not going to step up and help you. You got to help yourself. And this is a tool Congress provided for that. Don't listen so much to the noise. Understand where the noise is coming from, I think. Dissect that and realize that there's an incentive to own your own insurance company. There's the good and the bad and the ugly of it. There's no doubt about it. But with time, it's going to become a normal business practice. I'm convinced of it.
Yeah, I actually see. I mean, to me, it is very much, the more I've learned about it, it very much is akin to a 401k, but with, I think, a lot more benefits. You talked about kind of the discrimination clauses. Like if you own the company, the captive is for you. It's not something you have to give to every employee and all these kind of things. It's your dollars, right? And if you're owning a successful practice, the dollars you can put away pre-tax are so much higher than what you can do with a 401k and often even defined benefit plans or even cash balance plans. But that's, again, into the weeds in a different discussion. So I'm going to, at this point, we'll wrap it up because the hour is long and attention spans are short. And so what we're going to do is we're going to create for our listeners, we're going to create a website that we're going to start gathering the videos and the information. It's going to be captivemd.com. So you can go to captivemd.com and we will have this interview here. We will eventually put up webinars. We will put up some of SRA's videos in the future. And you can always email me at feedback@thephysiciansroad.com and just put captive in the subject line. And we can get into a much deeper conversation about this and get you more information. So I want to thank Van Carlson from SRA for being here today. We look forward to working with him in the future and helping as many physicians become familiar with owning their own insurance company as possible out there. And please go to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, the podcast app of your choice, and give us a rating, give us a review, and please subscribe. 5 stars are best, of course, because we can get this information out to more people. And if you want to interact with us more closely, you can always go to we have a Facebook group. You can go to facebook.com and put in The Physicians Road, and we have a group there where we can have much more in-depth conversations around these podcasts and the things that we're talking about. And so I want to thank you again for listening to the Physicians Road podcast. Today we're on the path to wealth, and we're talking about owning your own insurance company.
The Physicians Road is brought to you by Vernonville Asset Management. Vernonville Asset Management was created to help physicians build wealth and create income beyond Wall Street. Through our exclusive private investments, doctors can begin to free themselves from the burdensome regulations in healthcare by creating income streams independent of medicine. Go to incomebeyondwallstreet.com to get your free report, Wall Street's Biggest Lie. Again, go to incomebeyondwallstreet.com to get Wall Street's Biggest Lie and free yourself today.
Thank you for listening to The Physician's Road, where you create your life in medicine on your own terms. Please go to thephysiciansroad.com and sign up for your free guides and resources.